Hello everyone, happy Friday. I love you. I'm sending you a very big virtual hug wherever you are on the earth plane in this now moment. So today's video is about what we in the United States call the mainstream media. So there are 5 or 6 main media outlets where most of us have been programmed to get our information. The intention of this video is to shine light on a collective consciousness, mainstream media, that perhaps may be being dismantled. This doesn't have to be your truth. You don't have to resonate with this. In fact, it may trigger you or anger you. I encourage you, if you don't like this message, if it triggers you, if it angers you, if it upsets you, observe that. And instead of projecting how you are feeling back out onto me or somebody else, perhaps just choose to respond from a higher state of consciousness. Choose to respond maybe with some empathy, compassion, or love. Because we all have different truths. And why are we not allowed to stand on the battlefield with different truths? So here's what I'm going to begin with. Remember my video yesterday about the battlefield, right? And that we're all on this battlefield together. And we are here to bring the human collective into higher states of consciousness. And so one of the ways we do that is we see the quote-unquote enemy, which is a large collective consciousness on the battlefield that is holding lower frequencies, lower states of consciousness. And as long as we can see this and see this enemy come up, recognize it and feel it, we then can choose to step away from it, step out of it. We dismantle it that way, okay? The mainstream media is one of these enemies, so to speak, collective consciousnesses that is beginning to be shown to us. It's coming out of the shadow. And the consciousness, remember, it's not about the person. It's about the consciousness behind the person. The consciousness that the mainstream media vibrates at is fear, manipulation, control, and greed. No right or wrong, no good or bad. It's just the consciousness that feeds the mainstream media as a collective, okay? And so what we're seeing right now is that collective starting to get louder and louder and louder so that we can see it and choose to step out of it in order to dismantle it. This isn't political. This isn't good, bad, right, or wrong. This is how we shift a human collective. It's that simple. And what is currently happening is we are watching, at least in the United States, probably all over the world, but I'm just going to speak of the United States. We're watching the mainstream media get more fear-based, more controlling, more manipulative, right? And more greed. Because that has to come up so that we can see it and see it and see it and see it to dismantle. And I liken the mainstream media's relationship to us to a abusive relationship. And the reason I use this analogy is because when we are in relation with the mainstream media, it can feel very much like an abusive relationship. And I'll explain this to you. In the beginning, when you're in a relationship with somebody, it's you love them, you're having fun, they love you back, you feel safe, you feel seen, right? It's beautiful. When we step into the relationship with the mainstream media at whatever age it is, right? We feel like we're being protected, we're given information, we feel safe, we feel like we're being taken care of, right? And then what slowly starts to happen is this thing that we call gaslighting and manipulation, where our partner will start to physically abuse us or emotionally or mentally abuse us, very slowly though, right? So that we are groomed into being in an abusive relationship. So maybe we get pushed against a wall or slapped across the face, right? And the partner's like, it's no big deal. I'm really sorry. I love you so much. It'll never happen again. I never meant to hurt you. Don't feel bad. Don't feel sad. It's not that big of a deal. Buckle, don't be so emotional. It's no big deal, right? The mainstream media is very similar, right? They will tell you things that are going to create fear and anxiety, but then they will tell you not to worry about it, that we've got your best interest at hand, that no, there's nothing to be afraid of. Don't worry if you lose your business. It's okay. We're going to take care of you. But inside you're like, yeah, something doesn't feel right. When my partner hits me, something doesn't feel right, right? When the media is telling me that my rights are being taken away, something doesn't feel right, but they're telling me not to trust that. They're telling me not to trust my internal knowingness, right? And so, because the beginning of the relationship was good and it felt safe, you believe them. You believe them. So we slowly start to see this happen in the mainstream media, if you're awake to it. And then we start to kind of make excuses. Well, they are the mainstream media, and they are taking care of us, and they want what's best for us. This is my partner. He does love me. He wants what's best for me, right? We believe that deeply because we want to see the best in humans. Then what happens is people come into your life and say, that's not okay. That hitting or saying those mean things to you, that's not okay. And then what does your partner do? He separates you. He alienates you. He divides you by doing what? He tells you that they're not good for you, that they're trying to manipulate you, that they're lying to you, that they're trying to make you unhappy, that they're going to ruin your life. What does the mainstream media do when people come in and say, hey, you know what? That mainstream media information might not be the only truth. It might not be true. What the mainstream media does is they divide you. They're conspiracy theorists. They are evil. They're angry. They're volatile. Be afraid of them. They're trying to separate you from the truth that we're giving you. Right? They create a massive divide. We see that right now. We're seeing that. Right? There's massive amounts of censorship. Right? If you are trying to tell people, hey, that might not be the only truth, the mainstream media is going to try to censor that information. So they're going to try to create a divide. It's just what a partner does in an abusive relationship. So then what happens is you have cognitive dissonance, which is, wait a second. I'm seeing this stuff happening. I'm hearing these people tell me different information about the mainstream media, and yet I can't fathom that the mainstream media would lie to me. It just doesn't make any sense. I can't hold that truth. And so you choose to stay with the mainstream media. It's the same with the relationship. I know this person loves me. I know they love me. I can't fathom that they would be doing all this abusive stuff to me, even though they're doing this abusive stuff to me. And I'm afraid to leave. Where else would I go? Same with the mainstream media. Where else is there to go? Where else can I get my information? Because we have been programmed by the mainstream media to believe that they are the only place for information. We are programmed by our partners to believe that they are the only ones that will love us. That if we leave, we will be alone, we will be afraid, no one's going to love us, right? It's the same thing. If you start to look at it, it's the same thing. Now, there is no right or wrong, good or bad about this. This is consciousness, right? This is how a consciousness gets dismantled. So here's what I want to ask you. Just sit with this for a second and just ask yourself these questions. 1, is there one narrative in this now moment that all the mainstream media is giving us? Or are there multiple narratives? For instance, with COVID, are all the mainstream media outlets telling us the same thing? Or are they providing us with multiple theories, multiple stories, multiple narratives? And if there's only one narrative they're telling us about COVID, about the election, about vaccines, about science, about anything, if there's one narrative, why is there only one narrative? Because you and I know there's multiple truths. And don't we have the right to see different truths? That's the first question. Second question, is the mainstream media objective or subjective? Is there an agenda? Or is it objective? And are there multiple opinions being given to us? Question number 3, why are people conspiracy theorists? Why are people being censored? Why are people crazy or violent or whatever it is if you are not following along with their narrative? Because it is happening. Thousands of people are being censored every day if you are not in the mainstream media's narratives. I'm just asking a question. These are just questions. Question number 4. How does it feel when you are listening to the media? Close your eyes and just listen to the media, the mainstream media. How does it feel? Does it feel expansive, free, loving, peaceful, empowered? Or does it feel restricted, fearful, anxiety, worry, preparation for what may come, disempowered, How do you feel when you listen to it? And be really honest with yourself. Because here's the thing. We are shifting an entire human collective on the battlefield. And these large collective systems, one of them being the mainstream media, that is holding us in lower states of consciousness, fear, manipulation, disempowerment, no choice, anxiety and stress, etc., these have to be seen in order to be cleared and dismantled so we can shift the human collective into higher states of consciousness. And if you are experiencing these consciousnesses, this is an opportunity to begin to choose whether you want to stay in it or whether you want to shift into higher states. This is what this is all about, shifting an entire human collective. If the mainstream media is providing us with the opportunity to experience fear, lack of choice, disempowerment, anxiety, control, isn't that showing us what is no longer serving us and what is in a lower state of consciousness? In order for us to choose to no longer be in it and step out of it so that we can dismantle it, the way you dismantle it is you step out of it. You step out of the mainstream media's outlets. So this is just food for thought. These are questions to start to ask. This isn't about being in the matrix or not being in the matrix, because I hate to tell you guys, but we're in the matrix. And when you're in the matrix, you have to see the consciousnesses, the large collective consciousnesses that are here to be dismantled, and it takes courage. And you don't have to look, and you don't have to play in it. But if you're looking and if you're playing in it, what does it feel like? Are you in higher states of consciousness? Are you denying the states of consciousness that you're in because it's an abusive relationship, so to speak, and you don't want to admit it or acknowledge it? It's too difficult. That's okay too. But let's start to talk about what is on the battlefield. We should be able to talk about what's on the battlefield without belittling people, without name-calling people, without saying that they're a conspiracy theorist or they're in a cult or whatever else we're doing to people. We are all on this battlefield. We are all warriors of light. We are all shifting the entire human collective, and we are going to see these large collective consciousnesses get louder and louder and come out of the shadows, and we've got to be honest with ourselves. We've got to be honest, and we have to start to feel. Do you feel empowered? Do you have freedom? Do you have a voice? Do you feel free and loving and expansive and joyful and happy? Or do you feel restricted and fearful? Are you feeling like your rights are being taken away? Are you feeling like there is only one narrative and that is the only narrative? Are you turning on every single channel and for some strange, odd reason they all have the exact same narrative? What happened? What happened is we are seeing a collective that is ready to be dismantled, and we choose to no longer be in it. And again, this is just one way of seeing it, and it absolutely does not need to be yours. But this is important questions to ask. And we're going to see more of these large collective consciousnesses pop up. Be gentle with yourself. I love you. It's courageous to be on the battlefield. It's courageous to start to look. It's courageous to turn your back and say, you're nuts, you've lost your mind, I'm not going to believe that. All of it is okay. We're doing the best we can, and we're shifting an entire human collective from lower states of consciousness to higher states of consciousness. And I love you through it all.